Welcome to day 23 of our walk through the Psalms. Our reading today we found in Psalm 89 through Psalm 92. Have you been keeping up with us? 4 Psalms a day, each day take us about 40 days through this. Now, I want to look today at Psalm 91. Psalm 91 is a psalm of the security of thoroughly trusting in God. And as we read through this and as we look through the psalm together, that's one of the things I'd like you to think about is what kind of security have I found thoroughly trusting in God? Now, let's look at it together. Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snares, and from deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror by night, nor the arrows that fly by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you make the Most High your dwelling place, even the Lord, who is my refuge, then no harm will befall you, no disaster will come near your tent. For He will command His angels concerning you, to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. If you will tread upon the lion and the cobra, you will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. This is, of course, a time when we have been sheltering in place, if you will. Now, as I looked at this psalm, I noticed 3 places where the psalmist says that we as well ought to be sheltering in place. What are these 3 places where we as believers ought to be sheltering or finding our shelter in place as we come through here? Now, the first one we see in the first verses of the psalm and then repeated again in verse 9. This idea of dwelling in the shelter of the Most High and in the shadow of the Almighty. I believe the King James refers to that as the secret place of the Most High. The pulpit commentary seems to agree that this secret place or this shelter of the Most High is none other than the Holy of Holies, that most holy place of God. And so what the psalmist is talking about here to begin with is this idea that we ought to be dwelling in that most holy place of God. Now, this must have been unthinkable to the people that first heard this. The idea that somebody could actually dwell, that somebody could live in that most holy place of God. But we find out when Paul writes to us in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verses 19 and 20, that God made us to be that most holy place. That we ought to consider our bodies that most holy place of God and live accordingly. Next, this person that the psalmist talks about here is not only dwelling in this most holy place, in the most holy place of God, but that inspires this person to trust in God's protection and God's provision. And we see this through the vast middle sections of the psalm, that the psalmist here is trusting that God is going to look over him when he's attacked, when terrible things happen around him. This reminds us as well of what Jesus told us in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 23. He's come through this section and said there's a lot of things to worry that we could worry about. But instead, Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And God will take care of all this other stuff. Whether that other stuff be your health, your life, what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to wear. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And trust that God will provide and protect. The psalmist reminds us of the same thing, that God provides and protects those who have found their refuge, those who are living in him. Finally, this person is dwelling in persistent prayer. Now, this person dwelling in persistent prayer, we find this all the way at the end of the psalm. Because he is living in the holiness, the holy place, the righteousness of God, because he is trusting God to take care of him in all these things, this inspires him to live in this persistent prayer that we see at the end of the psalm. Again, this reminds us of the New Testament, where we're told that we ought to pray continuously in 1 Thessalonians 5:17. Now, during this time, as we look at this psalm, I want to challenge you with the idea, where are you sheltering in place? Where is a place where you are finding that refuge and that shelter during this time? Are you finding that refuge in the holiness and in the righteousness of God? Are you finding that shelter and trusting that God will provide and protect? Are you finding that place of shelter in place, a place of persistent prayer? I'd like to challenge you to do that today.